Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1356B, and today's date is August 15th, 2017, and the title of the episode is The Elite Push Their Latest Agenda, Divide and Conquer, but it's failing. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, as we can see, the corporate media, they are just pushing the entire Charlottesville agenda for the elite, the deep state. And what they are doing right now, which they've done in the past, and they'll continue to do, because they like when they're able to divide two sets of people or divide countries and have them fight against each other. I'll give you an example. North Korea, South Korea. You have two different countries. They don't want them working together, because if they start to work together and they start to work together economically, guess what happens? You lose the boogeyman. North Korea is no longer the boogeyman. They're working with South Korea, and there's nothing there. And if you look at all the different places around the world, what the elite like to do, they like to pit different nations against each other. And this is why one of the reasons they have regime change in certain areas, just like with Ukraine. They wanted that area, and now they can take Ukraine and they can put it against Russia, and they do this very, very well. This has been their tactic for a very long time. They also use this within countries, like the United States, for example, where they divide people. Well, you have Republican, you have Democrat, you have the left, you have the right. You have black, you have white. And what they like to do is they like to divide the people, and they like to have the people fight amongst themselves. This way, you can't see what they're doing. The focus is off of them. And this is what they've been doing here in the United States. And we've seen it in many different areas where they try to gin up something to try to get these type of wars within the country, and they try to expand them to different cities. And most of the time, it completely fails. It dies down. People look at the situation and say, you know something, why are we doing this? This makes no sense. But they still have those agent provocateurs that go out there and do this. And Charlottesville is one of them. This basically is the same divide and conquer technique. Now, they want this to spread across the country. Now, remember, they're losing out in the Middle East. They've lost Syria. I mean, that's just a known fact right now. North Korea, they're trying to push their agenda there. They're also trying to push it in Venezuela. But we can see that their plans, they're going down the tubes. It is not going to work. And what is happening right now is they're going to create as much chaos within the United States, throughout Europe, throughout the Middle East, in North Korea, Venezuela, wherever they possibly can, to divide everyone and have people fight against each other. This has been their plan from the beginning. And this is still their agenda. This is their last attempt. Now remember, they really don't give up. All they do is regroup and come up with a new plan, but their goal is always the same. And we've been tracking this for a very long time, and this is exactly what they've been doing. Now, what's very interesting is that there's a group called Disrupt J20, and the Department of Justice is demanding 1.3 million IP addresses of visitors to Antifa websites used to coordinate riots. Now, the warrant is very broad, and it looks like they want the hosting company, DreamHost, to hand over all this data, names, addresses, and stuff like that. And it's almost like going out there saying, listen, we have this warrant. We need half of America to hand over their information. The warrant needs to be a little bit more specific and a little bit more direct in what they're trying to do here. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to root out all these type of groups that have been involved in creating these type of riots within these protests. Now remember, when we look at all these different protests, they start out peacefully. They go through all the procedures, getting the permits and things like that, and then they bring in the agent provocateurs to disrupt, to make it look like, Oh, it's a black and white thing. Oh, it's a left and right thing. Oh, it's a, white supremacist or Nazi type of thing. And they push this as hard as they possibly can. And this is what they've done in Charlottesville, where they've been trying to push this agenda as hard as they possibly can. But it looks like it's really not going anywhere. Yes, it looks fantastic on the corporate media. They're trying to involve Trump in this. Actually, Paul Craig Roberts was out there saying it looks like they're trying to do whatever they possibly can to link Trump into this, where Trump was out there saying, America first. And then, of course, they're taking America first and they're trying to switch it around, saying that white America comes first. So that has to do with Trump. But if you really look at this and you look at the past where we had Bush, Cheney, Obama, the neoconservatives, and the rest, remember, they're the ones who said that Americans are exceptional people, whose country is the indispensable country. How does this differ from Trump's proclamation of America first? No one among the liberal, progressive left was disturbed when Obama proclaimed to the world that Americans are exceptional, indispensable people. Doesn't Obama use much clearer language that puts America first? If Americans are exceptional, everyone else is unexceptional. If Americans are indispensable, everyone else is dispensable. What's the difference? Paul Craig Roberts asks. One difference is that Obama was elected by the good people, the non-racist, non-misogynist, non-white supremacist people, and Trump was elected by the deplorables, according to Hillary's team. Trump was elected by all those individuals that were not for the elite, not for these individuals that want to go out and empire build and destroy other nations, to control the populations of the world. Basically, all of these presidents said the same exact thing. But what they're doing is they're attacking Trump because he's not part of their system, and they don't like it. And what he's doing is that he's undoing everything that they tried to do over the many, many years, where they tried to have this one world government, have all the nations on the same playing field, have everything centralized where they can control everything. All of that is falling apart right now, and they don't like it. And it's ending very, very quickly. Now, the Russian bank, Temp Bank, well, that has been cut off from the international system for the exchange of financial data. That is the SWIFT system. And the bank has been disconnected from SWIFT after the management of the credit organization fell under U.S. sanctions. Now, Temp Bank opened correspondent accounts for the Iranian Central Bank and a number of other large banks, and basically, because of the sanctions and everything else, they were cut off. But what we're seeing is that this bank and over 300 Russian banks, they are using the new Russian payment system, SPFS, which was created within the BRICS system, and they're using that system instead of the SWIFT. And what we're seeing right now is this move from one system to another. And as more and more banks come online, we're going to see that they never really needed the SWIFT. And this is being done in China, in Russia, and many of the BRIC nations. They're all doing this because what we're seeing is a transfer of the West system over to the East, because what these nations see is the dollar dying. As the dollar dies, the new system is coming online. And this is exactly what we're seeing. Now, the deep state, the elite, these different factions, some are saying they're one and the same, they are still pushing their agenda. Now, if you see out in North Korea, they are still pushing the agenda there. They want war. Venezuela, they're still trying to meet their goal of having regime change, taking control of Venezuela. Now, Trump is out there, and he's saying, yes, we are threatening to attack Venezuela. And you have to listen to his words very, very carefully. He is going along with the deep state agenda on purpose. And it looks like to me we have Tillerson and Trump. It looks like we have good cop, bad cop. And it looks like Trump is playing the part of bad cop, where he's saying, yes, North Korea is going to feel the wrath of the United States if they attack. Yes, we're going to use some type of military operation in Venezuela if they don't do what we say. Yes, we're going to place sanctions on Russia. And then we have Tillerson saying, no, listen, we can have a diplomatic approach to this. We can find a different solution. And Trump is trying to stay away from this because he doesn't want the corporate media latching onto, oh, he's part of Russia. Oh, he's going along with Russia, who wants Venezuela to thrive. He's going along with China and Russia, where he wants North Korea to work with all other nations. Remember, the elite, they need North Korea as this scary place out in this area. They need Venezuela. And if you notice, every time they try to have regime change, they say, oh, this person's a dictator, war crimes, humanitarian. They use all the different key phrases to make you think that this individual is psychotic, is bad, they're doing bad things, just like they did in Syria with Assad. And what we learn is that all of this is made up once again. But what's very interesting in what Trump is doing right now with Tillerson, even though Nikki Haley is saying that we're going into Venezuela no matter what, Trump, when he says these things, he's really creating the illusion that this is what he wants. But what he's really doing is he's trying to find an alternative way of stopping the deep state. And if you really look at his actions, not what he writes on Twitter, you can see this is exactly what he does. And everyone thought that, he fired those missiles in Syria. We're going to have 200,000 troops going there. We're going to invade. Actually, he did the opposite. Same thing with North Korea. Nothing's been done. He's not mobilizing forces, bringing the aircraft carriers all to that point. None of that's happening. It's not happening at all. What he's actually doing is he's bringing the South American countries closer together. Because what we're seeing right now is that different countries like Colombia, like Peru, like Brazil, they are now backing Venezuela. So from what he is doing with Tillerson, going along with the deep state, he's getting these countries to unite and object to what the United States wants. And this strategy is a lot better than coming out and saying, yeah, we're not going to do this to Venezuela. Because if they have all the nations coming together saying, no, you're not going to do this to another nation, it's a much better way of saying to the deep state, absolutely not. It's the same thing out in Europe, the same thing out in Asia. If the countries can band together, they can force out the deep state. They can stop the deep state. Look what's happening with Russia, China, Iran. Banding together in Syria, what did they do to the deep state? They're able to work together and stop them. This is exactly what's going on. Moon Jae-in in South Korea is saying, listen, you will not start a war. The only ones that declare war on North Korea is South Korea. And right now, we are not doing this. So basically, there is going to be no war. We already see that Kim Jong Un, guess what? He's not going to attack Guam. He's backing off on those plans. I mean, do you really think that was one of his plans? Where he was going to fire a missile and hit Guam or come even close to Guam? He knows what was going to happen there. But it didn't stop the Guam radio stations sending out an alert which scared the people in Guam. Now, what's very interesting about this in Guam is that it wasn't one radio station. It was KTWG and KSTO radio stations. Now, how did the employees working independently at two different radio stations manage to make the same mistake at almost the exact same time? Think about this for a second. This seems like this was planned. And we can see right now that war at this point, unless there's a false flag, unless the elite, the deep state, the neocons do something, Kim Jong Un, he's not going to do anything. Moon Jae-in, he wants to work with North Korea. China and Russia, they're not going to be attacking. They're not building up troops. None of this is happening. This is one gigantic production put on by the elite, by the deep state, to make everyone think that we're this close to World War III, when we're so not. Now, they might try something where they try to drag us into World War III, but this leader is not going to do it. The Taliban in Afghanistan is now out there saying, well, we want the United States to leave Afghanistan. They want a complete withdrawal of U.S. forces because they're saying that the U.S. is provoking ongoing violence in the country. Russia has also said it's time for the United States to leave Afghanistan. And I think this is going to be the plan where Trump is going to say, okay, there's no reason for us to be there. We don't need to be there. The Islamic State is pretty much done for, and there's no reason to keep the troops in Afghanistan. We have to understand that Russia is working with the Taliban right now, trying to come up with some type of peace negotiations. They're doing this with North Korea. They've done it with Syria. They're doing it with Libya. They're doing it with Afghanistan. And this is a major problem for the deep state. They don't like this whatsoever. Now, we can see that out in Syria, the Syrian army, the Russian forces, they have moved from the west into central Syria. They're moving towards the east. They're liberating a lot of many different villages, towns, cities. And we can see Vanessa Beeley, she decided to visit Syria once again. She's been talking to the people there. And it seems like it's the same exact message from all the people in Syria. All they want is to go home. They want to work. They want peace. And most of them are saying, listen, before all of this war and all the conflict within Syria, we lived a very peaceful, good life. And once all of this started, everything changed. Now, who started this? Again, it was the United States and the coalition forces. Basically, what they're saying there is that we had freedom before the crisis. These so-called freedom fighters brought nothing but suffering. They drove us from our homes. They brought nothing but weariness, loneliness, death, and poverty. And this is what the deep state, the elite, the neocons have done over the many, many years. They haven't made it better in all these countries. They destroyed the countries. They stole their natural resources. And they kept the fighting going for many, many years because they put into place a puppet regime. And to keep that puppet regime in place, they needed to fight against those people who wanted a free country. And this is what's been happening in Libya. This is what's been happening in Lebanon. This is what's happening in Iraq, Sudan, Somalia, Ukraine, Syria. Iraq right now wants the United States out of their country right now. They're making deals with Iran to have the pipeline come through. The days of the elite, the days of the deep state, it is coming to an end. All of it is basically slipping through their fingers. Everything that they tried to do over the many, many years, well, it has failed. And this is where everyone needs to be a little bit worried because here we are in the middle of August. If they're going to do something, most likely it's going to be from now until Labor Day, maybe a couple days after Labor Day, because we know that Congress is on vacation, and we know they like to play during this period of time. We've seen it back in 2013 with the sarin gas attacks, 2014, the Islamic State, 2015, bombing inside of Syria. This all happened in the month of August. 2016, and so on and so on. This is what we've been seeing. And here we are once again. And we can see that the days are now counting down where they're going to completely lose everything. And their entire plan, their globalist agenda is going to come to an end. And everything's going to have to be restarted. And I said this before. Once the dollar dies, once we get rid of the central bank, all of their funding comes to an end. they will not be able to do anything, because what have they used to create their empire, the dollar, through sanctions, through capturing countries, by stealing their natural resources, by putting their oil on the dollar. They've been using this as war currency. Maybe that's the word I'll use. It's a war currency for the elite, the deep state. And what's happening right now, countries are moving away from the war currency. They're moving towards their own currency or cryptocurrency, maybe even cryptocurrency that's backed by gold and silver. But this is what is happening right now. And the deep state, the elite, the neocons, their days are numbered. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.